You're listening to the Style and Stewardship podcast. So what is stewardship? That is exactly what we'll be talking about in each and every episode of this podcast. As Christ followers, I think it's so important that we manage every single area of our lives to the best of our ability. Not perfectly, but intentionally in our own unique way, and holding on to God's grace every single step of our journey. On this podcast, I'll be sharing thoughts, things that God's teaching me, and transparent talks. My hope is that when you listen, you'll feel equipped, you'll be encouraged, and more than anything, I hope that you're inspired to live out your day-to-day calling in your own unique way. This podcast is for the woman who wants to hear, "Well done." If you're anything like me, you may have noticed that we have gotten further and further away from real food, real whole food, and we have replaced that with conveniences or trendy diet things, trendy health terms. And I'm raising my hand because when I say I have gone down the rabbit hole of all the things and all the different ways of eating, just to rattle off a couple of them real quick. When I was younger, for no reason, I have no idea why, but this lasted for about a decade. I wouldn't eat pork or beef just because one day I just didn't like the smell. I've always been this way with food. I've experimented with it. I've taken things out of my diet. I've put things back in my diet since I was literally a kid. I remember when my mom would order pizza, I would take the cheese off. I was a picky eater. Not really. I would eat almost anything you put in front of me, but some way I would find my own way or my own version of how I wanted to eat something, whether it was because of texture or I just decided I just didn't like something. I would go literal years without eating it. It's so funny when I was thinking about this podcast episode and thinking about how far back I wanted to go. I'm just going to go on some of the high points. But I started kind of having a little bit of nostalgia, thinking, oh my goodness, I've been this way with food my entire life. And when it was, when that season ended and I decided I would eat beef, I didn't for 10 years, a little over 10 years, I didn't eat beef or pork. And I remember the first time, I was a waitress at the time, and I sat down and I placed my order and I sat down with my sister. She worked there at the time as well. And she was going, "Are you going to eat that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you're about to eat that burger." And I was just like, for some reason, I just wanted it. So I ate the burger. Years later, I went back to being pescatarian and I cut it back out again. And I decided one day I just wanted to eat some of my boyfriend at the time, who's my husband now. I wanted to eat a piece of his ribeye because he's not a foodie and he was so into this ribeye. So I tried a bite and I was like, dipped in barbecue sauce. That was kind of amazing, and we'll fast forward a little bit. I won't take you down the entire memory lane, but just over the last decade, I've done some different things with my diet. I did this thing called Hallelujah Acres diet because I started watching all of these food documentaries, and this stuff was up my lane. Like, this was my jam. Like, give me all of the things about what's really in our food. I watched a movie called Food Inc. Then I watched Farmageddon. Then I watched Cowspiracy. Then I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Then I watched so many, That Sugar Film. And then, fast forward, I think most people, after they saw the movie entitled What the Health, I think it was produced by Joaquin Phoenix, he's an actor, an excellent actor. And he is, known for being vegan since he was like a kid, and his sister was as well. He was, I'm not going to get into all of that. And, they did such an amazing job of putting this film together. if it wasn't convincing, I seriously do not know what is. It was so convincing, and it got me right back on that bandwagon of cutting things out of my diet, because I was no stranger to this. So from that, myself, my husband, and my literal newborn son, a couple of months after he was born, we went vegan. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm never eating another piece of meat again. You know, can you believe what they're doing? And this started this whole process of me, you know, looking at my food and what was in my food. And let me back up a little bit more. Right before that, I started going down this rabbit hole of spending literally 15 minutes in the cereal aisle just reading the ingredients. This is circa 2009. Just reading the ingredients of what was in it, and then standing there and Googling all the things that I didn't know, all of the different ingredients. So from there, I started this Hallelujah Acres thing, where it's basically veganism, and you are eating whole food, right? And I'm always talking about that, you know, even now. And what I did was I started cooking everything in like coconut oil. I got a nut milk bag, and I was buying raw almonds in bulk, and I was getting alkaline water from the store, and aloe vera, and I was making some of my own mouthwash with distilled water. And I went down this whole essential oils phase where I put drops of, you know, mint essential oil in there, and I would put a little bit of stevia, ground up stevia leaf, the actual leaf, in there to sweeten it. And that would be my mouthwash. I used charcoal to brush my teeth. I made some of my own deodorants with shea butter and coconut oil and whatever essential oils I could use. And that's when I also found out that my arms did not like baking soda, so I switched that to cornstarch. When I say I have gone down I've always been can you see where I'm going with all of this? So when you hear me say, like, I'm really passionate about this food thing, and passionate about what we put on our bodies and in our bodies, it is literally a passion of mine. And I thought, you know, okay, let me go back. So I do this thing where I get really, really excited, but I'm going to try to say this as succinctly as I can, and paint this picture for you of where I am now and why I talk about all the things that I do. So the whole vegan thing, I want to talk about that for a moment. We were vegan for about 2 years, and this got spurred on for two things. I nursed my son until he was about 22 months, I'm sorry. And after, you know, nursing, he would, if you are eating, I would suggest that you would save this podcast episode for another day. Okay. All right. He would projectile vomit, and I had to put my then 3-month-old son on acid reflux medication, which we literally had to hold him down for, because he's always been a fighter and strong-willed. So I went to the doctor, I went to the pediatrician, and she told me, before that, I'd already gone down a rabbit hole of what could be making him sick. You know, reading, obviously he's getting something from me that's causing this, because I was, you know, he was exclusively nursed. And I was thinking, what am I eating that's bothering him so badly? So I thought maybe I should cut out dairy, because everything that I was reading was saying, you know, this, you know, a lot of infants, most newborns actually cannot digest the proteins in milk. So I thought, okay, well, let's see. So I went to the pediatrician, and before I even asked her about it, she told me, I went to a different one. She told me, you know, you might want to cut dairy out and see if it helps him. So I'm not kidding. Within it was about 3 days, 3-ish days, not even 3 days, he was able to come off this medication because I cut out dairy. So I started using coconut for everything. So coconut milk, and I went back to like doing almond milk. I wasn't making it from scratch anymore because that was just laborious. And I was just like, all right, I can buy all like the vegan cheeses and stuff like that, because I know that they have no dairy in them. So fast forward a little bit. I want to tell you, if you've ever had to cut dairy out, let me tell you, it's so much easier to go vegan because it's in everything. Like, dairy is in everything, from butter to whey to casein to all the different derivatives of dairy. And I tried lactose free too, because I was like, maybe it's just lactose intolerant, but nope, that was not it. After doing this, what I realized was my own bloating started going away. My own stomach issues started going away, which I'd suspected that I had issues with this beforehand. But my acne started clearing up. My son no longer had to have this reflux medication, which was super hard to give this little baby. And I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. So a little while after that, I saw another documentary about food, because I love watching those. And it was Food Inc. I'm sorry, not Food Inc. It was What the Health. So I watched this movie, and then I was like, never eating meat again. Not going to happen. I'm done. I told my husband about it. He was like, I don't want to watch it, but if you want to do that, I'm on board. He's always on board. Oh, he's awesome. So cut all of this out, and we'll fast forward a little bit. We did this for 2 years, and to be honest with you, it wasn't super difficult to cut meat out because I'd already cut out, certain types of meat before. So I was like, okay, this is not a big deal. We can definitely do this. I've cut out plenty of things. So did this, and then, I noticed a huge difference in my skin, in my sleep, and I noticed the difference in my sleep because my stomach was no longer having these issues. And obviously it took my little boy having the same issue to, and you may hear him in the background. But that is real life. And I just, I decided, okay, we can do this. And finally got my husband to watch it. Mind you, he decided, yeah, we can do this vegan thing. You cook all of our meals anyway, so I'm on board. And he's always supportive. So I was just like, all right, we can do this. So I started having fun, honestly, creating all these different things, making all of these different meals. And I'm going to be real, there were things that I missed. So I missed eggs for some reason, really, really bad. I missed eggs, and I also missed like chicken, because all the little like chicken things that we had, the little fake chick patties and all of these things, they just never really hit the spot. And you think, and this is the warped mentality, in my opinion. The warped mentality is, if we, we're being healthy if we are vegan. And I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. This is my own personal belief. But I'm going to say it. Being vegan does not make you healthy. You don't get an automatic, you're healthy by default. What I found when we did this was we had to take supplements of B12 like mouth spray things by the My Kind brand. Like, I can take you down a long list of all the different things that we had to take just to feel okay. After the first year was when we started noticing the biggest difference. If I went one day without having, the certain vegan multivitamin that I had that had this astronomical amount of all these different vitamins that I would take, that the average person is getting from meat, we're no longer getting those things. So took all of this stuff and supplemented this and supplemented that. And it got to the point where it was like, why are we doing this if in order to be healthy, we have to rely on supplementing? Why are we doing this? So in comes something else that I tried, which was, okay, why don't we, I'm going to start, making one, people say that it's inexpensive to eat vegan. If you're a raw vegan, maybe it is, but the problem actually is you have to rely on someone else to make your food, your meat-like thing, because trust me, eating beans all day, every day, when I talk about like stomach issues, if you thought dairy was giving you stomach issues, let's talk about some beans. But it got to the point where I was like eating red lentils for breakfast. I was everywhere I turned around, I was eating carbs, and I was eating bagels with like vegan cream cheese and soy this. And we tried to avoid soy, but it's like we couldn't, because it was like it had this promise of quote unquote protein. And you think, all right, well, I'm getting protein, so we have to eat some of the soy products. Then it went to wheat meat. What wheat meat is, if you've never heard of this, is you buy literal vital wheat gluten, and then you can do these really cool things. It's like kind of like doing a science project in your kitchen, and you get different types of vegan fake MSG laden. Let me just go ahead and tell you that. Flavorings like broths and whatnot, vegetable broths and pastes. You create paste, and you knead this stuff like a dough, because technically it is what makes dough stretchy, but you're literally eating that without the wheat. So they called it wheat meat. And then you would do this process of boiling it in this vegetable broth. And then you would take it out, and then from there you could fry it, and you could batter it. You could do all these different things, and depending on what products you used in this water, and I mean literal products you used in this water, whatever you flavored it with, was basically what you could turn your wheat meat into. It's kind of like messing around with Play-Doh and turning it into a hot dog, or turning it into a chicken patty, or turning it into this, or turning it into that. And I would spend so much time in the kitchen. Mind you, I love being in the kitchen. I'm not even lying to you about that. I would spend so much time making all of this stuff, and you think, okay, this is from a vegetable, so it's good for me, or this is from a plant, so it's good for me. And at no point in time did I really believe that. I just thought I'm doing the best thing for my health and the best thing for my body, which that was the point. That's what I was after. I wasn't one of those people that was vegan because, and I should really say plant-based, because we still had honey, and I still wore leather, and I wasn't like going to get rid of my car because it had leather seats. So I wasn't, don't get me wrong, animals are great. God put them here. At the same time, I do not find that they are equal to people. I'm just going to go ahead and say that too. Animals are not made in the image or likeness of God. And I'm just going to leave that one right there. So I wasn't one of those people that wasn't eating meat because I thought it was inhumane or wrong. This was for no moral reasons. And I know that some people do have those. And here's the thing. You can believe what you want. I can believe what I want. And that is your choice. Just like anyone else. That is your choice. Just like it's, if you follow Jesus or not, it is a choice. He does not force us. So all of this going on, and finally got to a point where I watched another food documentary, and me and my husband had been talking about how terrible we were feeling. Mind you, we're getting up on year 2 at this point. And our kid, my son, started having all these stomach issues. And I was like, what is going on? Like, we're eating what's quote unquote supposedly healthy, and the healthiest way for us to eat, right? It's healthy to not eat meat. And that's kind of what it is marketed. It is marketed as you are doing something heroic for yourself, for the environment, and for the animals. Mind you, I wasn't of any of those other portions, but I thought, for my health, we're doing the right thing. Then when I saw how our meat was raised and butchered, and what the life that they had beforehand, and what they were fed, and all of these other things, I thought, oh my goodness, this is horrible. No one should be eating this. And here's the thing. This is the point that I want to get to. It took all of that going down this long road. And mind you, I'm still on a road, and I'm still on a journey, and I'll be sharing a lot more about that, because I'm like, somebody is experiencing some of these things. Someone, maybe you were even thinking about trying to be vegan or plant-based or what have you. When I started, looking at physiologically and our anatomy and the way that God made it and the different things that our body needs to live well and to function. Case in point, B12, you cannot get it outside of the animal kingdom. You cannot. The B12 that you get from what we would take was like a type of marine algae, like a spirulina, things like that. That is not the same B12 that you are going to get from an animal source. Why? Because it is a different type. And not just that, it is not bioavailable to our bodies, which is why the back of my multivitamin would say like 1,500% of your daily value of B12. Basically, we're going to throw as much at this body as we can and hope that we absorb what our body needs to function. If you have a B12 deficiency in your body, it will actually cause nerve damage. Like, do you hear that? Nerve damage. Most of these things happen over time. So most people that are vegan have to stay on this they have to get in front of this so much. And if you watched any of those documentaries, they'll say you can get enough protein from beans and all of this other stuff. Again, this is not true. So beans, for example, are covered like any other seed. A bean is basically a seed. Nuts, seeds, they're all the same. And what happens is the beans are not absorbed by our bodies and they're not as bioavailable because what they do, because of phytic acid that are in those beans and things like that, it actually binds to many of the minerals and vitamins that your body needs but cannot absorb because of all the things that are present in beans, for example. The same is true with nuts and seeds, which is why a lot of people have issues, gastrointestinal issues related to beans and to nuts and seeds because, if you think about it, birds eat seeds. And when they have droppings, the seeds are whole. They're made to withstand the process of being digested. They do the same thing in our bodies. So if we're not taking our beans and soaking them and doing all those other things, I'll get into that in another episode. But this is just the point that I want to make is that the protein and the so-called iron, this is not heme iron. That we get from an animal is not the same. So there is a lot of prevalence of anemia and vitamin B12 deficiency and a host of so many other vitamins. And most people can go down this road and do this for a while and they can be totally fine. But for us, we knew that if everything that I'm supplementing I can get from food, why not let me circle back to this idea of where my food is coming from? So if the problem is how this food is raised and what this food ate, you know what I mean? Like what this animal ate before it was on my plate, I need to start looking into that, not necessarily saying it's wrong to eat animals or I'm not going to eat, animals, because that was not our goal. Our goal was to eat in the way that was as healthy as possible. And it's not because we're trying to live forever, because this is not Eden, but this is not paradise, but we want to live well while we're here. And we want to avoid many of the issues that run in our families. For my family, I've spoken about that on a couple episodes. It may have been the last episode. But diabetes, type 2 diabetes runs in my family and heart disease runs in my family. So there are a lot of things that I don't want to get. There are a lot of things that I don't want to experience. And I realized, food can be medicine. And God gave us all of the different things that He has given us for food to nourish our bodies and to help us to do all the different things that we're called to do in this life. And if we are not stewarding that well and we're not doing that on purpose, we'll have detrimental effects whether we're eating meat or not eating meat. because it matters where our meat comes from, and it matters how it was raised, and it matters if it was on a feedlot or if it was out eating what it's supposed to eat. For example, we eat, did I even tell you that? We eat meat. We eat meat. I don't know if I even brought that to a closure with the whole vegan thing, but we did that for 2 years and we stopped because we realized that, you know what, we don't feel good anymore. When we first started, yeah, we felt good. But the fact of the matter is from one extreme to another. Here's the thing. We ate pretty well before, but we would eat, fast food several times a week. And, there were things that I would eat a lot of candy. I like sweet things a lot and a lot of sugar and, and chips and salsa. I'm just saying. So if you go from one extreme to another, so what I say when I mean extreme, the standard American diet is extreme because we get most things out of a package, most things out of a drive-through, most things off of a non-perishable aisle, and most things from places we don't even know. We don't question, and we just eat these things covered in, going through a drive-through and getting a salad with grilled chicken. And it's like, oh, this is healthy for me. And then it's like, oh, well, yeah, maybe it's decent for you. But then we drizzle it with this chemical laden salad dressing on top that's filled with canola oil and artificial ingredients and preservatives and things that go in cars for antifreeze. I'm not kidding about that. In our salad dressings. Then is it still healthy? We do things like, drink sodas, and it has nothing but phosphates in it, which are terrible for your bones because it draws calcium out of them. I mean, we could go down the list of the standard American diet and why a lot of us are eating trash. There was a study done not long ago where it's kind of funny actually, but in this study, what they did was they did some sort of, I want to say it was Harvard, but I can't remember who did the actual study. And they wanted to measure if a veggie burger or, a vegan burger compared to a real meat burger. And they found that, guess what? They don't. Just because something says it has 10 grams of protein does not mean that those 10 grams of protein are bioavailable to your body, which means that your body can actually use it, physiologically understand it, and on a molecular level, cellular level, use it. So just creating something in a lab and then calling it food does not mean that it is food. Just because those beans may have started out as beans, or that wheat gluten may have started out as wheat gluten, and you take all these things and you manipulate them to be like what you're trying to avoid eating anyways, to get your quote unquote protein. The problem is that your body doesn't recognize it as protein, and your body is not going to use it that way. So this is not like me trying to tell anybody don't become vegan or what have you. This is definitely our experience, and I know people are very sensitive about this thing. I was sensitive about it. When people would say, why aren't you eating meat? And they would give me, they would literally grill me. I had family members that were like, well, I had family members that totally understood, because they were like, oh, she's doing something weird again with food. But I had, relatives, my husband's relatives. I remember we went to a barbecue and we brought our own fake meat, and they were like, what the heck is that? What is that? What are you eating? And we were, we brought things like Beyond Burgers and some sort of fake hot dog, something or another. And here's the thing. It was, a lot of man manipulated foodstuffs, like food lab created stuff. And don't get me wrong, the ingenuity to take these different things and create these food-like substances out of. I applaud people because it is basically a creative art. And I think eating more vegetables is amazing and can be amazing, can be really beneficial for you. But I also have learned and am learning over the years that a lot of the times when we eat a free this or free that, and by free I mean like gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, this free, that free, what ends up happening is you replace what your body understands and knows with something that your body most of the time does not. And this was like a revelation for me, and kind of still is, to be honest with you. But I think that there are a lot of extremes in our culture where we think that if we're not eating something, we are healthy. And if we are eating something, then we aren't. But it's so much deeper than that. I think it's more along the lines of what has historically been food. What have people eaten for thousands of years? What have we done to food now that is very different than what we used to eat, or how we used to prepare it, or where we used to source it from? And we have lost our connection with what food is. And we've lost our connection with what God created food to be. We've turned it into this thing that we're always using to manipulate our weight, or manipulate different things, or we turn it into a moral issue. And at the end of the day, God made food for us, not the other way around. And it took so many different things for me to try and learn about. And it's humbled me in so many different ways. And it's made me truly look at food as this amazing gift and opportunity to enjoy what God has created to sustain us and to nourish us. And it has become something, at least for me it did, it became something that I would control, and it became something that I was trying to perfect, as though this is the Garden of Eden and it's going to be perfect. It's not. But I do also believe that having the knowledge and it's not wrong for things to have progressed and to have grown and changed, where we've got new processes in place where we can do things a little quicker. I get it. We don't live on farms anymore, most of us. But I also feel like some of it, because we haven't experienced that, like I grew up in New York, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't grow up with a garden and things like that. Those are things that I saw when I would, go south with my grandmother. And I remember, I'll never forget it. Like, they would go out on Friday, they would have a literal fish fry, and like all the cousins would come over. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. And now I look back on it like, man, that was such an amazing memory, because they understood what it meant to live off the land, and which essentially we're all living off the land, but now most of us are just living out of a grocery store, living out of a package, living out of food-like substances that we don't even know where it came from or how long it's been on that shelf, what the country of origin was. I mean, you name it. We've done a lot of weird things with food, and I'm raising my hand because I've done a lot of weird things, like different changes. But when I would come down south, and my great grandmother, when she was still here, she would do this whole spread for breakfast, and then we would do fish fry Friday. And she would literally like go in the backyard and get tomatoes and cantaloupe, and she would cut them up, and she would put salt and pepper on them for whatever reason. Now I realize she knew what she was doing, because certain, that helps you absorb minerals. Anyways, and stay hydrated. Listen to the hydration episode if you're like, what is she even talking about? And she would make something called liver mush, which I still won't touch. Sorry, I'm still not touching that. But she would make like salmon patties, or she would make bacon, and which I didn't eat at the time. I mean, I did some weird stuff, but she'd make eggs, grits, and then there would be toast, and then there was fresh fruit and vegetables from her garden. And I didn't even realize that I was taking part in what I was taking part in until I look back on it, and I think, oh my goodness, they really appreciated where their food came from because they had to work for it. And yes, we still work for food. You go to a job, you make money, and you buy what you need from the store. But it's just it's a disconnected way now. Now we don't know where that tomato came from. We know that it came from the store. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against the grocery store. I was just there yesterday. And today. I really love going grocery shopping. But I believe as a culture have moved further and further away from what real food is, and we've taken on so much of a diet mentality of what it means to be healthy that many times we miss the point. I know I have, and now that I'm reading more and studying more about just the human makeup and how our body uses and processes the different things that we take in, and I feel like the floodgates have opened up as far as wanting to know what it looked like for people to eat what they grew or eat what they raised. And I know people in southern states understand this a lot more than, someone like me who's from a northern state, and just really appreciating that food didn't just happen, that food was first created by God. And secondly, it was made so we could enjoy it. But when we're not stewarding that well, and we have no hand in the stewardship of that, I feel like we just totally miss out on that. I remember turning my nose up when my husband said that, asked me if I wanted to try deer. And now I am a fan of venison, and I am a fan of literally knowing where it came from. I have a friend at church who brings fresh eggs from her hens on Sunday, and she just gives them away. And I am a huge fan of those eggs and knowing where they literally came from, and what else was it? I'm trying to think. Something happened recently. Oh, my mom. I went over to my mom's, and she grew an heirloom variety of eggplant that they're white. And anyways, they're more delicate. It's really, really cool. And just getting into trying to get reconnected to what God made and learning what it means to eat and be nourished and fed, and not caught up in what culture says, whether that's diet culture, whether that's American culture, of what food is or what food should be. Because here's the thing, we are extremely blessed in this country. I'm one of 7 kids and I know what it's like to go without, and I know what it's like. I feel like I'm just now getting back to, this is going to sound crazy, but a full circle moment of appreciating what's put before me and appreciating the effort that it takes for an animal to be raised and fed what it's supposed to naturally be eating, and butchered, and all of those things, because that is still an amazing modern day convenience, and it's honestly a luxury. So when it comes to our household, if what I spend money on personally, I spend more money at the grocery store than I do anywhere else, because I want it to be a great quality, because I care about those things. And, whether it's, getting out grass-fed organic beef, everyone can't do that. And I realize that is a luxury. And I wasn't always able to do that. And it's such a blessing. And throwing food away, don't even get me started on that. I told my husband when we got married, this is even before I was having this whole revelation with what God's given us for food. But even before that, when we first got married and I was cooking And he would turn his nose up, just like I did to the venison. He would turn his nose up to leftovers. And I would tell him very lovingly, babe, I'm going to let that sit in the fridge for 2 days. After that, I'm going to put it in the freezer, because you will be seeing that again. We're not just like throwing food away. And that's when he got on board. It took him a little while, but he got on board and he started taking leftovers for lunch, which I find to be way more filling anyways. So this is just some of our experiences. And it's so funny because I was talking to him and I was like, I need to have you on the podcast again to talk about your perspective of all the different things that we've done with our food and with trying to, steward our wellness and our health, but also, steward our finances, because there's certain things that we don't do so that we can, afford to get, the best quality that we can when it comes to our meat. Anyways, there are other ways that you can do this without, spending a ton of money. And one of the things that I've used before, I actually did a YouTube video on this. I will put it in the show notes. And it was like a Misfits Market. We did that for produce for a little while. And just to make sure that we were getting, honestly, the most bang for our buck when it came to that, and trying to get organic, because I have some crazy allergies. And my husband does as well. But I'm going to cut the episode off right there. I think this is probably the second to longest episode I've ever done. And I hope that it is of value to you. If nothing else, maybe it is entertaining. I was sitting here like reminiscing, cracking up. And I truly believe that what we put in our bodies has the biggest impact on our health, outside of, some environmental factors that we can't control. Like, sometimes there's mold in our environment. Sometimes, we have some hay fever going on. There are all different types of things that we have issues with. But I truly believe that this is that area that we also, if we're diligent and if we're intentional about, over time, it can be the area that is truly blessing us and blessing those around us, because we feel well and our body's getting what we need, what it needs. So we're able to really walk in all the things that God has us doing to help our neighbor, or, to love our neighbor, to love our family members, to be there and to really be present, because we're not, just, there are going to be, diseases and things and sicknesses, God forbid, that we can't help, but in the areas that we can help. And I think that we're called to steward those areas well. I'm talking to me just as much as I'm hopefully talking to one of you, to just exhort you to begin to think about the way that God created food, and the fact that we don't have to stress so much about eating perfectly, that we do the best that we can in whatever season we find ourselves in, financially, emotionally, and all of those things. And I hope to share some tips that I've used and that we've used along this long journey that we've been on and continue to be on when it comes to our health and our wellness. And, one of the main reasons why I, got my certification was because I really, really wanted to understand for myself, what it meant to eat well and to nourish my body, so that I knew, because that's a legacy that I want to carry on throughout my family. I don't want to, Lord willing, if I can help it with whatever He's given me the ability to, I do not want my son to have type 2 diabetes or heart disease. I do not want my husband to have, any of the issues that also run in his family, if I can help it. And I think that that's the point, So if you enjoy this episode, please be sure to share it with someone. I would love for you to leave a review on iTunes. I used to hear people say that, and I'm like, why do people keep asking people to leave reviews? And now I get it. I get it now that I'm on the other side of the mic. But I would love for you to share this with someone. Leave a review on iTunes if you would be so kind. I would appreciate that. And I look forward to sharing some more with you about these topics and just stewarding all the areas of our lives that matter the most. Just managing this lifestyle of wellness, of faith in Jesus. And until next time, your life matters. What you do with it matters. So what will you steward well?